my oldest went off to college, went to American University, and then after he graduated, he had some really big opportunities with very important people. He's still there in DC, and he accepted a job at AFT, American Federation of Teachers, and he is the digital director there. But before he did, we were discussing his options, and I wanted him to take another job that I think would have made him more wealthy. And as a mom, I was just thinking, my God, get your life together, buy a house. I was thinking in all the ways a mom does. But he said to me, Mom, I really feel like I need to save public schools. And then a light bulb just went on for me. And that was when the journey sort of began in terms of the storytelling. And I thought, and I said to him, I can't argue with that, son. I think you need to do that. And I just admired that so much and his understanding of what was going on in his mid-20s. And then I began to, just think about it. It ruminated for several years with me. And I would be at, say, a party here in Hollywood, and perfectly nice people would substitute the word, oh, we're going to a charter school or, whatever school, as though that was synonymous for better school. And they were intelligent, progressive people that I felt should have known better. And we have really great schools, and they just didn't know. And I had trouble helping them understand that public school teachers are educated people with degrees and certificates, and your kids are going to learn, and that your presence also makes the school a better place because of your involvement. And so I called Asher one day and I said, that thing about saving public schools, you guys are losing, because the narrative has been so embedded in the mind of otherwise right-thinking people. And we have to change the narrative. We cannot continue to allow the Hollywood narrative, honestly, of bad teachers, dangerous schools, charters as a replacement for good school, and all of these things that have just taken over the thinking of the general public. And Hollywood, Hollywood's lazy, okay? They want to make a movie that they know will sell tickets. So what do? Make the same movie over and over again because they think this is going to sell tickets. And so it's a sort of it's a cycle. And they've made so many movies about bad teachers and about charters being the answer and waiting for Superman, all that kind of stuff, that it feeds on itself. And a lot of the people that are making those movies don't even know. They don't even know, because it's a lazy way to create conflict. And a story has to have conflict, has to have, hurdles that you're going to get over. It has to have drama. It has to have humor. It has to have all the things that make you want to watch a story. And I knew that my life, my kids' lives, the teachers we knew, all had those things, but that the way I wanted to tell it was authentic and real and beautiful and about triumph and, just reaching in there and saying, you are valuable teachers. You have changed my life. My life has been changed. And so have my children. So I just started interviewing. I asked Asher if I could not interview so much, interview a little bit, but just hear the stories of teachers around the United States. And he gave me access to teachers. And I was just so humbled and impressed by their positivity and belief. And, they would tell me stories that were pretty difficult, some of them. And yet they still had so much kindness, belief, love, hope, and a lot of happy endings, a lot of struggles, a lot of things that were going on that I wanted to portray. So that's the long story. Hope you liked it.
I think it's kind of ironic that we're discussing this on the night of the Oscars. I view the truth of public education and the stories behind it kind of the untold story of Hollywood, because we know the narratives that have been put out there. We know that there's people involved in the entertainment industry that are fans of dismantling public education. So it's going to take a lot of us coming together and getting the truth, as Bats has been working for 6, almost 7 years now, getting the truth out there so people realize what the true story of public education is. But public education starts when you're a student. So I'm curious to know, what was your own relationship with public schools as a student?
Well, I went to public schools my entire life, and I am from a complicated family. We are Mexican Irish Catholics from the South. That alone is not a complication, but it definitely made us stand out and interesting. And there were various issues in the family. We were poor, and there, like I said, were issues that you guys probably come up to. But I don't want to say too much about it because I still have living relatives and so forth. But I was in great need, and so were my brothers and sisters. And there were so many teachers along the way that really, really saved my life, and I've never forgotten them. And I'm still in touch with one of them that I interviewed for this, my 7th grade teacher, uh, Miss Stanton. And she was, and so many of them, they had this way, and I look back on it, and this is what I'm trying to give to my characters, of seeing a student, not just me, but any student, and understanding so much about that student and being able to reach in to that kid and not just think about how to teach them, verbs and subjects and so forth, but how to make them capable of learning, capable of opening and sort of transcending what was going on in the home. And that just happened over and over and over again throughout my entire public school career. And it's made me who I am today, and the ability to be standing, frankly, to even be here, alive, educated, with a degree in theater, film, and television. Without them, honestly, I just wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. So
I really love the fact that you remember your 7th grade teacher's name. As a teacher right now, you always wonder, like, okay, so is anybody ever going to remember me? Am I really having an impact on the classroom like I think I am, like I hope I am? So knowing that adults, they look back and they do remember teachers' names, and we can only hope and pray that we are making enough of an impact that it is our own name that is remembered. So you touched upon a couple things about coming to LA and putting your children in public school. So what was your relationship? How did it shift from you being a student to being a parent, and what were some of those experiences?
I was a pretty young single mom. I had these, 3 amazing kids, and I, was caught up in the fear of taking good care of my kids. And I remember walking into the first school that I thought was my kids' school here, and it was in a wider neighborhood, let's say, and the front office woman said, "Oh, you can't send your kids to those schools. I'll let you use my address." And I was like, "What?" Oh. And I went, and then she told me what school my kids actually should be in. So I went over to that school, and I walked in, and I was talking to people in the front office. The principal came in and invited me back into her office. And she said, and I told her what happened. And she said, "You send your kids here and they'll be just fine." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." And I began to realize that I could just be involved and be a part of the background to support the teachers and the principal and staff and that sort of thing. And I did. And while I was going to UCLA, I would arrange to, between classes, or because you know how classes are, you're in college, you've got gaps between them, to go back to one of my kids' schools, whatever it was, volunteer on the playground or stuff envelopes, or, just do something to support a teacher, paint, whatever, and then go back to my own school and do my own thing. And I just began to understand that, again, it was just the teachers were great. The situation was great. Schools are safe. it's a safe place for a child to be, and that if I'm involved, I only raise not just my kids, but all the kids. And I, had the ability to just bring all those kids and their families together through my participation and theirs. And so when I figured that out, I realized that everything was going to be okay, because the system itself and the educated teachers who are taking care of things are just mightily devoted and doing amazing feats with very little, to be honest. But I want to say one more thing about journey to making this story. When I realized that I wanted to write this story, Asher gave me the book by Diane Ravitch, Reign of Error. And I read it about 2 times, I think, over a year. It took me that long because I just felt like I was being smacked, by the data and the reality. And I understood it intuitively, but I didn't know the full reality until I read that book. And I thought, how can I dramatize this data and these realities into this story? And so that became the my charge, is to just think about all of the misconceptions and how to dispel them within the story and still make it a really good story. So that was part of the whole journey, not just me being a public school kid and then sending my kids to public schools and realizing they were great, but also understanding all of the dismantling intellectually and emotionally of our belief in this system. And I do look back on my childhood, and I had a cello. I was given a cello by band. It was fully stocked. I brought it home, made noise with it. There was a paper drawer and pencils were provided. You didn't carry a backpack. There was so much that we funded. And then we just started defunding, which I also learned through studies at UCLA was very much married to the Brown v. Board of Education right after that, how we started on, trying to figure out a segregation system that could continue to work, but not be breaking laws, which, I kind of feel is really the reason that we have the vouchers and privatization is just more segregation, and a lot of people don't even know that that's what they're participating in. So I wanted to figure out how to talk about that as well. I hope I'm answering your questions. I'm rambling.
No, you are. That's a very good point. You, so in that story of being a parent and enrolling your students in school, you mentioned an interaction that you had, you don't want to send your kids to that school. I'll give you an address so you can register for this school instead. So that falls into the, the good school narrative, which we know is obviously coded racism, right? Good school is equatable to white schools in most people's minds. And that's a narrative that, we're working to break down. So I'm assuming you address issues like this in the different writings that you've done for this project. I'm wondering if there's any other kind of cultural or racial, social issues that you address.
Well, yes, because LAUSD is an organically intersectional place. Everybody goes there, every kind of human, from all kinds of cultural backgrounds, including my kids. And I love the idea, and I personally like to tell intersectional stories to maybe work out my own cognitive dissonance of my own life. But I just have always lived in an intersectional way, pretty much. And I know it's incumbent on me to listen. And I just wanted to tell this story in this place where it was organically intersectional, and that I have been and spent time in my life and entrusted my children to. So in the story, we pretty much start out with a white family that can no longer afford private schools, and they come into an awakening that that their child doesn't qualify to be in the AP classes at the public school because the private school gets to call AP classes anything they want, or any class anything they want, but they're not regulated by the same course audit system that a public school is. And so I kind of, my shot across the bow, I think gingerly, because I don't want to push away the audience I need to educate, but I do make it clear right away that this kid is in a better place and that they wasted $40,000 a year on her going to private schools, because they're not actually a different system or better. They are just expensive, and they probably have cellos, and some things are probably easier, but that doesn't make them better or the teachers better for sure. I am of the mindset that my kids got the best education. And by the way, they went to great colleges. And I didn't have to pay anybody anything to cheat a test or anything like that. So I just wanted to address that. I wanted to talk about the great thing about public schools is you've got everything there, every kind of person, and you have every issue there, just like you do at private schools, except it's open, it's honest, it's talked about. It's everybody's working on things, and it's a beautiful pastiche of what it is to be human, you know. So I talk about, you know, the housing crisis because the teachers can't afford to live in their area. I have a transgender student, and the parents are having difficulty accepting it and then coming around, and the teacher actually facilitates that because that kind of thing really happens. I have migrant kids who are a sister who's raising her siblings because her father died and the mother was deported. I've got subconscious bias of the brand new well-intentioned white teacher. I've got a parent who's a meth addict, and I've got, you know, I talk about guns and safety. In fact, I take that on pretty. It's really great because I have the opportunity to kind of like upend people's thinking about this, and sadly, we can't say that any school
Angela, can you hear me? You froze for a moment. Angela, you still there?
um, schools not like the ones that I'm portraying. They're and you know, sadly, mostly white males are romanticizing automatic weapons, and I just don't find that in my Angelino community the same way, and in urban environments really. So I did want to deal with guns, but I don't want to have that kind of thing happening in my story, because the majority of gun violence is really suicide, handgun, unsecured guns, and that sort of thing. So we do talk about it in the thing, but it's not a major part of it because I want to stick with what teachers have to do every day, which is carry the weight of the entire of every culture in this country and type of home and turn on a light bulb, knowing all of those things. And I've watched the superhuman feat of it unfolding in front of me as a student and as a parent, where the greatest skills are required of a teacher. And I wanted to talk about that and put it in the context of all these complicated things that come across their desk. Hopefully you can hear me.
I know I can. It seems like others can on Facebook as well. I'm getting reactions to a lot of what you're saying. So,
I
yeah,
also,
Jennifer?
I was going to say, one of the things that I was thinking about with Diane Ravage's book is all this testing that we went through and still are doing. And it just, I've heard it said that data is the new oil. And it occurred to me that these tests are really just a way for, people to profit by extracting value from a child, but not giving value back, because the tests really don't reveal anything, certainly not about teachers, unless they reveal, really who hasn't had breakfast or lunch, or who isn't in the group that designed the test questions and what have you. So I decided that I would make that a part of the motif as well, just how destructive that has been and is, and what teachers told me about how they feel about that. And I agree, as a parent, for sure. And even as a student, I ended up achieving pretty high level of education, and I have never been that happy about a bubble test. I never have felt like that. That tells you anything about what I've learned. So I wanted to address that in the piece.
So, from the overview of all the different stories you gave, there's a lot of kind of nuances that a teacher has to navigate through, and you're going to be exploring some of that. But you didn't mention the teacher versus administrator dynamic. So, I'm wondering if you cover that at all.
Well, we have to have conflict, so that is part of the conflict. And I did notice that as a parent, from that first school that my kids didn't go to that woman had her fiefdom, and she was telling me, where I can't stand my kids, you're going to do this. And I just thought, this doesn't feel very good. And I have encountered administration staff that are not thinking as creatively as teachers, and there are issues between them. And so I do have this one character, a really fun character, the front office secretary, who, has a lot of power. And power does corrupt, absolutely. So there's that going on in just her little world, and she's a union buster, because she is, I talked to a principal friend of mine who's a principal. She's not a principal anymore, but she does principal training. And there's great principals and there's not great principals, and I've met them, and this woman that I portray in the front office is a union buster, and one of the issues for her is she feels like she's doing a lot and she's not paid very well, and they are paid less. They don't have the same requirements for their jobs as teachers do. Nevertheless, it's not fair how much they have to shoulder. But there's a sort of there's a real friction there, from the people that I've talked to, and so I decided to kind of talk about why unions are important and how it protects a teacher's ability to not have to succumb to the threats of a front office person or a parent. And I do have a parent in this that is that comes from a very entitled place, but their irascible child has been kicked out of one too many schools, and now this is where they are, but they still haven't left their attitude behind that everything should bend around their child, and they threaten one teacher with their very important friends, and that whole union idea comes around in this, because before unions, Well, we know. I mean, I've read Albert Shanker's book. Asher also gave that to me. You know, a teacher couldn't have that kind of belief that they could stand up to somebody who wanted them to do something that was not good for their pupil. Um, and so I address that, and it's fun. It's fun. It illuminates the point of, you know, why a union matters and why teachers matter, why we need to stand behind them in solidarity. I mean, I'm very pro-union. My son at AFT, and I believe in the union. I'm in unions here in Los Angeles. So I just felt like that's also another easy trope that everybody goes after. And it's just so silly, you know. People believe things about unions that are just mind-blowing. It's so amazing. I've had people say, well, you can't fire a teacher if they're in the union. I'm like, you can fire a teacher for cause if they do something that they can be fired for. But you can't fire a teacher because you don't like them, or you know, your kid left their classroom and found out that you know, some fact of history that you don't happen to like. You cannot fire the teacher for that. So I wanted to really illuminate that idea that there aren't unions aren't standing behind bad teachers. They're standing behind the integrity of teachers. And without them, teachers did not have that support in the past. And it's a very important element that I wanted to just dispel. That's a lot of stuff you see in Hollywood movies and television that is, it's ignorant too. It's as ignorant as people substituting charter for quality, you know. And they just don't know. I had a friend a while back who was using union insurance because everybody thought she was in the union and she had never paid her dues. She was able to use the insurance for some reason for a couple of years. And she was on my porch talking about how much it costs to pay union dues and how that her rate is a little bit lower when she gets paid through union. This isn't a teacher, it's somebody else. And she was complaining, and I said, yeah, you stole insurance for 2 years from the union. You know how much that's worth? And I just gave her hell for it because she wasn't thinking right. She was thinking, I'm getting $2 less for my starting rate here than if I go in as a contractor without the union. When really the value she was getting was, you know, many, many dollars more. And she didn't fully understand that until I kind of helped her out with that. But I want to kind of address that in this film and in the future television show, and just remind people what that's about, that it is for the good of the foundation of our schools and teaching and the idea of leading in thought.
It's interesting how we find so many people put a dollar value on unions. You know, oh, I got savings on my insurance, or I got reduced tickets to the amusement park. But, you know, we know the value of unions cannot be monetized. And we know the value and the worth of building collective power, whether it be from grassroots up. You know, you're still acting as a union when you don't have a high union membership within a state, and it just building that power creates the space for unions to be stronger at whatever level they do exist, whether it be high or low within a state.
Well, it's a big theme. Again, I weave a lot of themes in this thing. But it works because, you know, a good story you should wind through different things that are happening in the milieu of the whole thing. And so it all happens.
So before we talk a little bit about, you know, how the project's going and where you're at, a lot of the stories you said in the beginning, you have been interviewing and speaking with teachers and educators. I'm curious, are you still collecting stories? Is there still more to be told?
Yes, I'm still very much interested in hearing stories because of future potential for this thing as a television series and whatever. I really want to hear people's stories so that if I make any adjustments in this, I keep honoring the authenticity of teachers. And so we have parentteacherthemovie@gmail is our Gmail address. So if any teacher wants to email us a story about their interactions with a student and a parent, or just a parent, or anything they want to talk about their life as a school teacher, but I'm particularly interested in interactions with parents. Please email us at parentteacherthemovie@gmail.
I'd especially be interested in some of our Red for Ed folks doing that and kind of telling the story about how you interacted with parents as you were building your movements, and what kind of relationships were built from that, and how that was navigated. I'm sure it wasn't all peachy roses and, hey, let's join together and have this walkout. So it'd be interesting to hear that story also.
Yeah, it's funny because, we now have, I'm going to open this blind so we can see a little better. I'm thinking light because I am a filmmaker. Did I do it? The light is going down and I don't have great light in here, but, Betsy DeVos has done a lot for teachers in the sense that she has awakened parents in a way that they were not awake before. She has made people realize what teachers are doing. And so in a horrible way, we are now beginning that awakening, which is another reason why I really want to tell the story, because I want to capitalize on this moment when people are saying, oh my God, that's horrible. That's wrong. So yeah, Red for Ed, I'd love to hear how you organized with parents and how they had their awakening and yours. What happened? parentteacherthemovie@gmail.
So before we sign off for the night, tell me what's going on with the project, where you're at, the path that you've traveled so far.
Well, we're backed by Film Independent, and they are our fiscal sponsors, and so we're able to take donations. And I made a point of telling people that I can't ask for money from teachers because you guys already pay for pencils and paper and stuff like that, and all kinds of things. My sister's a teacher, and just the other day she posted a cart full of things that she was buying for her students, and I was just like, oh my God, you're not paid enough and you're still buying all this stuff. But at parentteacherthemovie.com, that if you go to parentteacherthemovie.com, you can go directly to our page. And if anybody that's listening donates $1, and I can get, 10,000 $1 donations or 60,000 $1 donations, it's super helpful to me to be able to, when I'm working with studios and production companies, to say, look, all these people gave me $1 because they're saying they will buy a ticket. They will see this movie. They don't want a repeat of the bad teacher narrative. And so we've been doing that campaign, and we've raised about $10,000 that way through people just small donations. And I'm just trying to increase that, so when I go into these rooms, as they call it here, and I'm having great meetings. I'm not really gonna name drop because it's not right for me to do, but I'm having some really great meetings. And the more $1 donations that I have, the better, because I can just prove that I have this audience. And I also want to thank you, Bats, for making your donation. We got it the other day, and I really appreciate it, your vote of confidence. But go to parentteacherthemovie.com and donate $1, and then ask anybody you know to donate $1. That's all I really want, because I don't want teachers' money otherwise. That would kill me. But I would love to have you guys all go there and tweet it out and share it on your Facebook and just say, look, if you want to see this movie, donate $1. And then that gives me the power to say, I've got 20,000, I've got 50,000, I've got 60,000 people who've said, I want to see your movie. And I have the proof. Here it is. And it just helps with the budget, with what they're willing to spend on the advertising budget. I'm already planning to travel to you and others to do screenings of this movie because I want you guys to see it first. But we want everybody to see it. We want parents. We want people who thought charters were the answer. We want people with their sort of internalized racism they don't realize they have to see this movie. We want people to have realizations, and I'm trying to do it in a gentle way and kind of an open way. And I go back and forth between it because it's a lot to digest, and I just know that if I do it dramatically correctly and people see it, we're going to be able to continue having great conversations about the foundation of society, which is our public education.
That definitely sounds great because we know that more conversations are needed. So what I'm going to do for anybody who's watching and has expressed interest in kind of pledging their support behind this movie, I'll create another post from our Facebook page and I'll share it in the group, and we'll do so over the next week or so to give you a post to share on your own personal pages, as well as the link where you can pledge your just $1 of support for this project. Like I said, they came to me with this project, and I'm critical of things. You all know this. So I sat and I listened, and I believe in it. It definitely has my personal stamp. The board of directors reviewed all the materials that they were given, and they voted to support it, which is why we put monetary value behind it ourselves. We live on donations. It's not like we have any kind of funds rolling in. So for us to make that decision and make that donate, that definitely gives it our seal of approval. Angela, I want to thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Sorry for my Oscar party interruption and Wi-Fi down.
Not a problem. I'll work. So everybody, a little bit more messaging. I'm going to work on bringing my son over to merge the two recordings that we have so that we have one live video to put up on the website so that people will also be able to share that as well. And there was one more thing I was going to say. Oh, so this is hopefully what's going to be the first of many interviews that we do in Badass Teachers Association. In a couple weeks, I'm going to have a special guest come join me to talk about the census and the importance of it with public school funding and why educators should be getting involved and discussing it in their classrooms and their communities. So everybody, have a good night.
I have to add that. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.